You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
Hey, we get to share about a relaunch of a Lutheran school right here in the St. Louis area. I'm excited to share this story as we head to Bethlehem Lutheran Church in St. Louis, Missouri in just a moment. Today's episode of The Coffee Hour is underwritten in part by Concordia University, Nebraska. You can learn more about Concordia University, Nebraska by visiting cune.edu. Joining us today, the Reverend Dr. Gerard Bolling. He's lead pastor of Bethlehem Lutheran Church in St. Louis, Missouri. Pastor Bolling, welcome back to The Coffee Hour.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, good to be here.
Looking forward to chatting with you today. Also joining us today, the Reverend Kneppe. He's pastor of community engagement at Bethlehem Lutheran Church in St. Louis. Pastor Kneppe, welcome to The Coffee Hour.
Great to be here.
So we learned, I think it was through a Facebook post, that some exciting things are happening at Bethlehem Lutheran Church. And we want to share about some of those exciting things, especially with Lutheran education at Bethlehem Lutheran Church. But before we dig into the exciting new adventures happening there, let's learn about the history of Bethlehem Lutheran Church. Pastor Bolling, you want to start us off with that? A little bit about the history?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Bethlehem Lutheran Church is located on the north side of St. Louis. It is located in what they thought in the mid 1800s was going to be the downtown area of St. Louis. Didn't actually turn out to be that, right? But we were previously the community of New Bremen before we were Hyde Park. And so this was a German immigrant community that they thought, well, we might as well build a Lutheran church in our community. And so it was established in 1847 and then put down roots on the church in 1849 in the community of New Bremen. And they built a 1,000-seater church with absolutely no parking lot. And so the church was a walking community church. They had big families in North St. Louis of 9 to 15 kids, right, that were attending from one household, coming to our church. And God used Bethlehem to start over a dozen Lutheran churches all over the city and county of St. Louis, many of which people who are listening probably worship in, right? God had blessed her to be a mother and a grandmother and a great-grandmother and so on and so forth as a ministry. Bethlehem, the community changed a little bit over time, and what was a really large, thriving German immigrant community became derelict houses, right, in the 1900s. And many people started to leave the community, and therefore that church that had 2,000-3,000 members on the rolls dwindled down to just 2030 in the 1988 marker, right? And then you've got housing crisis that happened, a lot of other things that occurred in the community, and these big homes that used to have 12, 15 people as kids in it, and then parents and grandparents, they were abandoned. And so God used Bethlehem to transform the community physically through our housing ministry, and then also spiritually through the ministry of our church and the way that he's blessed us to be able to reach youth and families. And so we've grown back and bounced back to a pretty thriving LCMS congregation that's predominantly African-American, of course, Louis community and beyond.
That's really cool. I didn't know any of that history. That's really cool history for us to know. Now, where does Bethlehem Lutheran School fit into this timeline?
So in the 1800s, when they had built the church, they had thought together as a community, man, we need a place for our kids to go to school, a quality Lutheran Christian education for our children. And so they decided to put a school building in alongside the church. And that is actually where we're physically located right now. So Bethlehem worships in the basement of the school building, which was a bowling alley. It's funny, but many LCMS churches had a bowling alley. Pastor Chris and I can sometimes hear the thing moving backwards, the moving while we're preaching. And so, we were a pretty thriving educational community. We had one grade in our schoolhouse for a while, and then had to transition for a bit to 2 grades in the schoolhouse. And we were that way until the mid-1900s, late 1900s. There are some pretty cool names in LCMS history that went through Bethlehem Lutheran School, one of which is Al Sensky, who created National Lutheran Schools Week, right? He's a Bethlehem Lutheran School graduate, which is pretty cool that God has used him to bless hundreds of schools all over through ministry as well. So yeah, Bethlehem Lutheran School had called workers. They lived in a teacherage in the neighborhood, which is such an old concept, but it's just essentially like a parsonage, but only for teachers. I could only imagine how much fun that would have been for those Lutheran educators. And they served the community Saturday through Sunday. They were a 7-day-a-week operation. And when funding sort of ran out and kids were not able to pay tuition, and they were not able to kind of sustain the school, unfortunately, they had to close Bethlehem Lutheran School. But, and you may not know this, we kept the name alive through our after-school programming. And so all the after-school programming Bethlehem's ever done, when you write down things on official paperwork, it still says Bethlehem Lutheran School, parentheses. So we're excited to breathe new life into it, right? And put it into a context again.
You gave us, Pastor Bolling, you gave us kind of a picture of how the community has evolved over time. How would you describe the community where Bethlehem Lutheran Church is today?
Yeah, I mean, the community today, we're a predominantly African-American working class community, many residents living below the poverty line. And so essentially, we have a lot of families that really struggle to make ends meet in our community. And education, paying for education is just not something in their horizon naturally. But we are excited that we've been able to partner with CCLS Academy in the last few years to bring a really engaging ministry from their part of town all the way from Kirkwood, right, to North St. Louis City through CCLS Academy. And the way that school is funded is through the Mo Scholars program, which many districts have really rallied behind the Missouri district to make sure that a lot of people would put their tax credits towards that program to allow kids to go to school. And then Today, Tomorrow funding, the ACE funding, LISA, which has been a partner in Lutheran education for decades. All those things allow our kids to go to school at no cost. And Pastor Chris actually is a really great way of talking about cost, right? Because sometimes in our community, people are like, oh, it's free. And we don't like to say it's free, actually, at Bethlehem. We kind of taken on a little bit more of his language. What do you say again, Pastor Chris?
Yeah, I tell people, it's not free. It's just at no cost to you. Somebody is paying for this somewhere. And I think when we reshift the language like that, it adds value to what we're doing. For not only the people that are experiencing these ministries, but also the people that are contributing to these ministries. It's not just free handouts all the time. It's a cost. When we have a cost, we have an investment. And that's what we're doing with people in this neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Pastor Chris, how do you see Lutheran School serving the community?
Yeah, that's a great question. Pastor Bolling spoke a little bit about just kind of the nature of what we deal with in this neighborhood. I mean, there's no way around it. This neighborhood is impacted by the wages of sin. It's hard. You see it every day. You see broken families, broken relationships. And when you have a place that's so deeply impacted with pain, with sin, I think you need an equal impact of the gospel message in a community like this. I think a Lutheran school and our Lutheran theology and our Lutheran teaching and the richness and the pureness of the gospel that we teach, yes, we're going to teach, math and science and reading. We're going to have all the educational components that our students need, but what we're really giving them is a framework and a hope to be able to survive in a community like this. And I think that's what makes this a school like not another school down the street. We're not a public school. We're teaching you everything, and we're giving you a hope, a peace that passes all understanding. And so we're super excited to be able to infuse that into this neighborhood.
Bethlehem, as you pointed out, Pastor Bolling, Bethlehem has just a long history in this neighborhood, in this community. And I know that both you, Pastor Bolling, and Pastor Kneppe are both very deeply committed to this. And I know that pastor who served alongside you before this was very deeply committed to the ministry of that. Pastor Bolling, how long have you been at Bethlehem?
I've been at Bethlehem for 13 total years. 9 of them in July will be as a pastor. And then the others I served as a vicar. And then I was a staff member for Family Life for 2 years as well while I was at the seminary.
Pastor Chris, you have a similar story, right?
Yeah, I came here in 2020 as a field worker. I took a brief stint away for vicarage, came back for my 4th year, and then I'm coming up to my ordination anniversary year. So I've been a pastor for 1 year here now.
So you've been there a few years as well and gotten to know the community. And Pastor Schmidtke was there for a long time as well. Pastor Bolling, you want to tell us a little bit about his investment in his commitment to that congregation, that community?
Pastor John Schmidtke was called to Bethlehem in the late 1980s. Bethlehem, again, had dwindled to just 20, 30 people, right? Call them the golden oldies back then, who had said, hey, we have 6 months worth of backing for ministry here. What could God do with these 6 months? And he was actually fielding a call between Bethlehem and Zion Lutheran, who's kind of like a cousin of Bethlehem, just down the block from us. And, the call at Zion made a lot more sense, and it should have been the call that he took. But for some reason, he and Sharon felt the Holy Spirit telling them towards Bethlehem. So they accepted the call, and God turned 6 months of ministry into 30 plus years of revitalization of the place and the space. And God grew that through kids, and he had a heart for kids and making sure that kids knew the discipline it took to be able to grow well, right? But then also that kids didn't feel forgotten or lost, and that they knew that they were loved and cared for by spiritual leaders. And he infused that into many generations of seminarians and other church leaders that serve today. He was an incredible leader. He was an excellent communicator. He was a great preacher and teacher and co-worker in the gospel. And I got to spend a lot of time with him, and I'm really grateful for the time we had. Today is actually the anniversary of his death, this actual day. And so, man, it's tough. I keep thinking that as we open new ministries and, new things come on the horizon, we bring on new staff members and even professional church workers. Every time it happens, every time God shows up, I just keep thinking to myself, man, he would have loved this, right? And rather than thinking like we should make him proud, we should say, man, I hope we're making God proud, which we're not capable of, but through his son, Jesus, right, who is the one that we represent, God is smiling at our work. And so, yeah, great guy, and who laid the foundation for what we have today.
Thanks be to God for great servants like Pastor Schmidtke and both of you today. And we're going to learn more about what that looks like as Bethlehem Lutheran Church and School continue to grow. We'll chat about that in just a moment right here on the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
At Concordia University, Nebraska, discover a distinctly Christian community that equips students to live by faith with courage, character, and conviction. Intentionally combining our Christian faith, Lutheran heritage, rigorous academics, and practical real-life experiences, we prepare students to fulfill a higher purpose in their vocations and life. Learn more about Concordia University, Nebraska at our website, cune.edu. That's cune.edu.
Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
Today we're talking with Pastor Gerard Bolling, lead pastor of Bethlehem Lutheran Church in St. Louis, Missouri, and Pastor Chris Kneppe, pastor of community engagement at Bethlehem Lutheran Church in St. Louis, Missouri. We've been talking about some of the history there and the commitment of both of you and your predecessor, Pastor Schmidtke, to really continuing to grow and investing in the congregation of Bethlehem Lutheran Church and School. We talked a little bit about what a Lutheran school would look like in this community. You mentioned the CCLS Academy at Bethlehem last year. How did that, tell us a little bit more about what that academy looked like at Bethlehem and how that prepared for what lies ahead.
So it was about 2020, 2021, where we had learned that the charter for the charter school that we had welcomed into our space was most likely not going to make. So any charter school that opens, they're sponsored by a university for a few years, and then based off of test scores, that charter makes or it doesn't make, right? And we, were in our second school, charter school that we were partnering with at that time. And unfortunately, the test scores of the kids just was not there. And so they were, preparing to close. Going through a second closure of charter school, Pastor Schmidtke and I, we just got into a time of prayer together. We took 2 weeks to pray about really what is next, right? The idea was not to put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. We know that education is an issue in North City. We need something that works, right? And at that point, charter schools were not working. And he and I got back at the drawing board and we just said, it doesn't make a lot of sense, especially financially. This is often what the Lord does, right? But it feels like we need a Lutheran school in the space. And so at that time, Matt Hayner was really growing the idea of, multiple schools with one campus that was, not physical, right? Like CCLS has many different campuses that make up the conglomerate of who they are. And he was looking into the city and he had met with Pastor Schmidtke and I, and he said, well, what'd you think of a micro school, a one-room schoolhouse model, right? That the kids are learning at their own level and then they're pacing at their own level. He's like, a lot of studies have shown that they will perform better on school testing because it's individualized education. And so he's like, we just keep it small, right? Rather than focusing on anything being big. I mean, just a few learners into cohorts, right? And using technology. And God kind of blessed every step of the way of that conversation. And mid-conversation, Pastor Schmidtke passed away. And Matt had said, Gerard, do you still want to do this? And I'm like, well, no, because it's hard, right? But yes, because it feels right, and Matt was in the same place. And so we began the CCLS Academy ministry. And the idea behind that, again, was just cohort, keep it small, 3rd to 5th grade. We're accepting kids that would be able to learn in that model and fit that model, and no more than 24 kids in a cohort. And those learners have gone on to go to Lutheran North, right? And go to Cardinal and some other really great schools in the area and perform very, very well. And it's been a blessing to our local Lutheran schools, Lutheran highs, junior high schools, Grace Chapel, et cetera, so forth, to receive our kids after 5th grade. And it's been a blessing to us too, to see those kids get promoted. Our kids come in and their test scores go through the roof because they're able to have individualized education focused on them. And I pretty much know, though I've never done any study on it, I think being able to talk about Christ during the daytime allows them a real outlet that they were not getting at any of those other schools. And so kind of as the idea of that ministry marched forward, CCLS had always known they wanted to be a parent, right? They didn't want to have this be a sidecar ministry over time. They would have to birth Bethlehem Lutheran School. And I just can't say enough about the leadership at CCLS. Those leaders are really forward thinking, and they're also not selfish to the point of, hey, we know that this has to be your own thing, and we want to empower you to do that. That's the kind of co-working in the gospel that a church like Bethlehem needs to thrive into the future, right? Churches that will come around her as a community and say, how can we empower you to do this yourself, right? And so I appreciate CCLS for doing that, and all the churches that conglomerate her as a school. And we have had tons of ministries come alongside us to do the same. Bethlehem has 26 sister church partners, all LCMS Lutheran, all over the country at this point, that put hands on us to be able to do that work. Representing in those 26 ministries are over 75 professional church workers who all pour into us, right? Like, God is doing a pretty big thing here to make school happen, and we're really appreciative of it.
Pastor Kneppe, what does this look like as you prepare for the coming fall 2025?
Oh my gosh, there's so much to do in so little time. I mean, everything from new inspections, getting the state to come out and inspect us and get our license active, and we got to do some facility repairs, and we have to prepare our teachers and prepare our students, registration packets. So there's a lot of nitty gritty. There's a lot of administrative tasks to be done, but through it all, I mean, it is incredibly exciting. I mean, just seeing people come together and say, hey, I've got 3 hours, let me paint a classroom. Or I've got 6 hours, let me put this new floor down or put this drain in this sink. And I mean, as Pastor Bolling said, our network of sister churches, I mean, it's just the members themselves just coming and saying, what can we do for an hour? What can we do for 3 hours? How can I pray for you? What do you need? Do you need books? Do you need chairs? Do you need this? Do you need that? And so it's a lot of work, but God is just blessing beyond our comprehension. Pastor Bolling, I almost talk every day, where there's not a day we go by where we're not shocked outpouring of blessings that we're experiencing right now.
Yeah.
Tell us about the teachers and the staff that are lined up for this fall for Bethlehem Lutheran School.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you a little bit about them. So CCLS Academy, of course, already existed, right? And our plan is just to transition those same educators over into Bethlehem Lutheran School. Dejan Stewart will serve as our director/guide within the classroom. So Dejan, he is a lifelong member of Bethlehem, second generation Lutheran. This year's little baby. We affectionately call Dejan our big baby, right? Because he is no matter how big, no matter how old he gets, he's always going to be our baby, right? But now he's teaching our babies, which is proving that I am maybe getting older and older. Well, but he serves as the lead guide. There's no teacher in the classroom when it comes to a micro school. You have guides that are individually guiding kids' education, right? So he's going to be the lead on that and then shaping vision and direction of that school. Travante Brock is a career team leader at Bethlehem. Our team leaders lead our after-school programs, and he was actually the one that piloted in over a decade ago our EAC programming that is our after-school family of programs. And so Travante will serve as sort of that supportive guide role, but he's going to be our student ministry outreach coordinator in his full, right, of what. And they'll toggle back and forth the academics of each of those classrooms, and then also the physical education, art education, et cetera, so forth. And And then Katrina Wallace is going to serve in the art music role. She is our director of worship arts. She comes to us from Concordia, Ann Arbor. And so she will go back and forth between the classrooms to teach art and music. And then we have other teachers that come in to teach different subject areas, almost like professors, like adjunct professors. And so Connie Levels is a member of ours who will go from classroom to classroom doing ELA and some of the social studies. And we're seeking someone to do phonics for us, to especially work with our little ones so that they have phonics daily separate from what they would do for ELA. So we're relying a lot on the Lutheran community, for some of those roles to be filled.
You mentioned individualized learning. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that actually looks like in a setting like this?
Yeah. So in the morning, the kids come in and they start their day. They calibrate with some Jesus time. After they calibrate with some Jesus time, they kind of have a time where they all come together and they get on the same level with a general kind of painting of what the day will look like. Sometimes they do a project and project-based education during the day, or they go on a field trip and they learn how something is by doing the thing rather than talking about doing the thing. And then other times they're given a directive of, hey, we want to learn about this concept in math. And, maybe Tashana is on this level, so she's learning it from this kind of angle that's more practical. But, maybe David is more analytical, and so he gets to learn it from this level. And that's something that the guide kind of presets, before the day begins. They do utilize a lot of technology to make that happen. So they use their computers and tablets and things, but then they have individualized education time with one-on-one with the actual guide.
So that may mean if a student starts off, say, in second grade mathematics this year, and they progress very quickly, they may not stay in second grade mathematics if they don't have to stay where the rest of the class is, right?
That's exactly what that means. And so, yeah, you can individually go to that student and program what they're learning so that it kicks up, so that it's third or fourth grade. In fact, last year, one of our students, Journey, who is now at Lutheran High School North, he had finished, fifth grade math mid-year. And so he was already into the next grade's math. And at Lutheran North, he won the math and the science bowl. He took all of it, right, this last year. And we believe it's because that micro school gave that gentle push of, hey, if you want to go beyond, you really can go beyond. That's why it's hard to describe the grades at the micro school, because they're not relative to like reality that as we know it in a traditional school sense. Some students are doing things on different levels.
With just a couple minutes left, tell us about, you mentioned earlier, Pastor Bolling, the partnerships that are so valuable to Bethlehem thriving in today's age. Well, tell us more about those partnerships and what that looks like to partner with other Lutheran churches and schools.
Yeah, I think it's been really exciting to be able to take, again, those 26 churches and throw those asks out to them of, hey, how can you help? We have this certain need, or, we have this thing that we need to get done. And we've got this goal, what can you do to come out and do that? So we've done that. And then alongside that, the school ministry, we have sister churches. I had lovingly, actually, Pastor Schmicky's son, his church in Peoria, the church and school, Christ Lutheran, they are a sister church. And he's like, well, there are sister churches. Can we make it brother schools? Can the brothers get in there a little bit, So we might do that. I don't know, right? But with the schools, not just saying, hey, we'll send a quarter of chapel offering, but hey, do you want to be pen pals with our kids so that our kids learn how to write letters? Kids don't know how to write letters. They don't do that anymore, right? So how can we link up with some of those things? Or would your whole 8th grade class come and would they, host a serve day for us? Lutheran North and South has come to do serve days at our campus, right? Like, what are ways that we can tangibly connect? And this is really a lot of what Pastor Chris does on the ground of how those partnerships live out. How can we use the individual gifts and talents of those sister church members to leverage what we do? And I mean, you've got a lot of really great stories, I feel, from some of the members that you get to really kind of have on doing some of the work that we have here. I mean, I think of Mr. Steve, right? He's an excellent example of a guy who, does he work 40 hours a week at Bethlehem now? I feel like I see him every day. He's outside my door right now fixing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we just have such as Pastor Bolling says, just an outpouring of just individual members from these congregations who have all sorts of skills. As he said, Mr. Steve, older gentleman, retired, but I mean, sometimes has more energy than me. And he'll be up, no joke, he'll be up on our roof fixing our AC unit or repairing shingles, or then he'll be in the basement fixing our plumbing. And so he just has this whole host of skills. And then I think of someone like Jennifer, who is really invested in the actual educational program in our child care center and will hopefully continue into the school. She has those gifts. She comes with that educational background to really invest and make sure we have high quality, delivering a high quality educational product within our school. And so everybody just kind of comes together and watching God put the pieces of the quilt together and just kind of sewing the whole thing together to make it work. And it has nothing to do with Pastor Bolling and I. We could rack our brains all day and we could not have assembled the amazing people, both professionally and volunteers, that we have investing into this project right now. It's only by the finger of God. And so we're humbled to be a part of it.
Another huge example is we just opened a child care center at Chapel Cross Lutheran in North County. We had a ribbon cutting last week, and all of our child care centers will help feed our educational ministry at Bethlehem Lutheran School. And I really don't think we cut that ribbon unless Amy Bernhardt from Zion Lutheran in St. Charles, her and her family have been holding down our after-school program once a week, every single for the better part of the last 5 years. They've been coming. Zion has taken over one night of EAC programming there, to the point that some of the kids that were little are now much, much older and they're heading into Bethlehem Lutheran School or beyond, right? Because of the consistency of that family from Zion that made that happen. And so those are the moments to rejoice, right? And to share in the joy as the church together of what God did through us, just because we showed up.
You mentioned looking for a phonics instructor. What are some of the other needs that you still have for the upcoming year?
Well, we need someone who can fix stuff. We need a handy person badly, many handy people that can put sheds together, that can repair things, right? Like, we're in great need of people with time that are able to do that. We're in need of people who care about kids, that want to be a sub for our childcare center. When our childcare leaders get sick or the teachers get sick, they need people to replace them, right? Or if they go on leave. And so we need some strong people who are willing to be on call to say, yes, I will hold a baby for many hours on end while you have a baby, right? Things like that. We're definitely in need, I think, in Bethlehem Lutheran School for people who come in adjunct, a subject area. So if you've been a marine biologist, better than us talking about marine biology, come in and do marine biology with the kids. Our kids are tactile learners. This is the kind of community that we're in, right? So they want to see stuff. They want to do stuff with their hands. And then anybody else who just is like, hey, I've got this quirky thing that I do, we'll put it to good use. Pastor Chris and I will point you in the right direction to make sure that some stuff happens.
All right. How can we learn more about Bethlehem Lutheran Church and School?
So if you go to our website, BethlehemSt.Louis.org, STLOUIS.org, Bethlehem Lutheran School will have a live tab there by next week that will kind of port away from CCLS has been their click through into our school structure and what we're looking to do. So you can click there, and then you'll find information on childcare as well in our centers and facilities. And then, of course, with our worship ministry, we want you to come and visit us physically, or, you can come listen in on Facebook online at 10:30 a.m. on Sundays. That streams on our social as well. BethlehemStLouis.org. Our guest today, the Reverend Dr. Gerard Bolling, lead pastor of Bethlehem Lutheran Church in St. Louis. Pastor Bolling, thank you so much. Thank you for having me, guys. And the Reverend Chris Kneppe, pastor of community engagement at Bethlehem Lutheran Church in St. Louis, Missouri. Pastor Kneppe, thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.